So overall, if you see, that's why today banks are, right? On the one hand, of course, there is the desire, the need to kind of innovate, right? And find new ways to engage with customers meaningfully, whether it is the Gen Z, Gen Y, all the segments, or the boomers, right? Everybody wants to now be part of digital, right? Fraudsters are kind of getting smarter as the day, right? I mean, you kind of plug one loophole and we find there's a new way by which we get conned. It's happening every other day. There are tons of reports that you can see, or publications carry a lot of news about how the scamsters have kind of pulled a fast one. So there is a need to continuously be on your toes, be innovative, think sharper, use your AI tools, use machine learning or whatever models that you're using to be able to kind of be one step ahead in the game. So the point is, as a leader, you need to know when to be inclusive and when you probably need to be a bit of an enforcer.
Yeah.
Right?
Hi, welcome to the Perfios podcast.
Thank you, Casey.
Let me just introduce you to our audience. Ramas carries 3 decades of experience in financial services, and the last 10 years focused on digital in financial services across multiple organizations. And today he is the Chief Product Officer of Karnataka Bank.
Yeah.
And I'm Krishna. I am the Chief Product Officer for Perfios India. And it's a privilege to have someone like Ramas here to talk about a few core aspects of digital, which I believe both of us have a little bit of experience with.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's jump into that. But before that, if you would like to, state a few initial thoughts of yours on how you feel right now or how you are placed right now.
No. So firstly, thank you, Casey. Thanks to you and to Perfios for having me here. I think it's a pleasure to be here, doing this podcast and sharing whatever bit I've learned over the last 30 years as part of my experience across various banks and BFSI, as you rightly put it. I think I'm very excited to be here and talk about digital especially and product management. I think those are 2 areas which are very close to my heart. And it's something that I've been doing in and day out. And so, what better platform to talk about it than today?
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Let's talk about that word which you just used called product management.
Sure.
I think one of the first differentiators, one of the first things which I understood when I started dealing with BFSI industry is that product management carries a very different connotation in financial services, and product management carries a very different connotation in technology.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I think product management in financial services is something which is more related to the core aspect of designing that financial services product, whereas technology is about core designing that technology product.
Yeah.
But I think it is merging, and I would say that it has merged over the course of, let's say, the last 7 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Or, yeah.
7 to.
But yes, definitely we're seeing the convergence happening. Yeah.
I don't think there is any product management in financial services left without the digital aspect of it. Would you agree to that?
You're right. Absolutely. They do go hand in hand, right? Because whatever you do today in product management, any product that you kind of deliver to the market, if there is no digital angle to it, then it's not going to work, right? Because digital today has become hygiene, as you obviously know.
Yeah.
And without digital, I don't think you can actually launch or, deliver any products to customers meaningfully today.
Yeah. And still, right? And this is where I think I wanted to start today's conversation with. And still we see that, and we are both financial services people, so we can talk about this.
Yeah.
There are so many parts of financial services, so much revenue line items in financial services which are still non-digital.
Yeah, true.
And that remains even today. And it has nothing to do with the company. I don't believe that it has anything to do with the company, because there are very, very tech first companies, people who have adopted AI long ago, people who have jumped into LLMs long ago.
Yeah.
But there is still a huge amount of revenue for those companies still being driven through traditional channels, as we call it. And I have seen it, you have seen it in multiple previous organizations of ours, right? Why does that happen? Or what is that thing which continues to churn out that much revenue in a non-digital fashion, especially when what you said is right.
Yeah.
That cannot be anything which is non-digital.
Sure. Okay, let me just step back a bit, Casey,
please,
right,
please.
and talk about how this entire digital journey has kind of evolved in the banking side. Yeah, and you're right. Banks, unlike maybe fintechs or unlike NBFCs or unlike other players in the BFSI space, banks are a multi-product platform. Yeah, and they cater to segments right from the retail customer or the micro MSME customer right up to large corporates. Right,
Yeah.
so there's an entire spectrum of customer segments that the banks cater to, and so if you were to look at it, I think how if I were to step back and see, and this has been part of my own journey because I've been in these banks, as I said, for the last 3 decades. If you look at it, initially when digital started, it was more of looking at just replacing paper with an electronic
Digitization.
form, digitization as you call it, right? So it was just about that. Savings account करना है customer के लिए, चलो ठीक है, how can I make the journey easier rather than go across to his house, have him or him having come to the branch,
Sure.
fill up a full form, with so many documents and all of that. How can I kind of simplify that process, make it faster, make it easier for customer, and convert it into electronic form, right? So that was how digital started, digitization, as you rightly said. And then it moved on from there. Today, if you see most banks, they would have got it right?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody opens, a form. Nobody opens accounts with an account opening form now, right? There is a tab or there is a web or a mobile that they use, an app, and they get the account opening done. So that piece and all is now evolved. If you look at most banks, everybody would say that they have kind of cracked the code there. So that's one part. Second part is the entire process is related to any kind of a journey for a customer, right? So once a customer is onboarded, there's a bunch of things which happen in the back end. How can we automate some of these processes? Was the next challenge, right? It could be a simple thing like maybe underwriting the customer for a loan, or it could be something like maybe getting his account activated at the back end, right? There's an entire process where there's a welcome kit issued, and there are certain checklists which get checked, the KYC documents are checked, all of the things are done, right? So the next step of automation or digitization which happened in the banks was that.
Yeah.
So let's look at how can I digitize some of these processes. Also maybe even look at replacing human beings with a bot, so which is where RPA came in. So all of those things happened. And again, if you were to stand here today and look at it, a lot of the big banks and medium-sized banks have kind of done a lot of work there on the process automation also. So I think those two things have been kind of achieved in that sense. What is the proficiency level? How much of a benefit it is making? It differs from bank to bank and kind of journey to journey, and that's fine. But the fact is, they have been able to achieve efficiency. There's no doubt about it. Earlier, an account opening journey, which used to take probably maybe a few days, today happens in a matter of minutes.
Correct.
So that is definitely something that the banks have been able to do. Then the next part is about looking at customer journeys. So how can I ensure that a customer sitting in his the comfort of his office or his residence is able to digitally engage with the bank? And now I'm not just talking about the account opening process, right? It starts right from him expressing his need, me being able to kind of meet that need with a product, and then he onboarding himself through the journey through some kind of a do-it-yourself mechanism, and then me then of course engaging with them digitally through that process and then beyond, and then more importantly, the transactions and the servicing part also becomes digital, and I'm able to now engage with them digitally through my mobile app or whatever. So I think that is the next step which has happened again to a large degree. That is where a lot of the banks are still trying to achieve a lot of efficiency and proficiency and benefits through digitization. So that's the next part. While all of that is happening, the next step is, and you alluded to it, is AI. Right. So now it's not just about replacing a human being to do any mechanical or operational process. It's also to replace a human being to be able to think better while engaging the customer, to engage with the customer meaningfully, intelligently.
Yeah.
Right? Understanding the customer's needs, understanding the customer's emotions. All of these are areas now that we are seeing the advent of AI and Gen AI and various other forms of AI which is coming in. And that's where digitization is going, in that direction. Now, through all of this, one of the things that we have to recognize and remember, Casey, which I'm sure you also agree with me because you're in the same space, is that banks are highly regulated.
Yes.
Right, so there's a lot of regulatory overlay on banks, oversight on banks, rightly so for the right reasons, and we need to be extremely careful about how we therefore go about this entire process. So while I do all of these digitization processes, I cannot compromise on any of my controls. I have to ensure that I'm playing by the book, right? Whatever the regulation says in terms of whether it is a digital lending norms, whether it is KYC norms. Today, anti-money laundering is such a big issue. Money mule accounts where customers are opening accounts digitally, and then there is a lot of money laundering which is happening.
Yeah.
So I need to therefore, as a bank, ensure that whatever I do, I'm doing within the
Ambit of the law.
ambit of the law, and that is another very important thing that we need to recognize from a banking perspective.
Yeah.
So overall, if you see, that's where today banks are, right? On the one hand, of course, there is the desire, the need to kind of innovate, right, and find new ways to engage with customers meaningfully, whether it is the Gen Z, Gen Y, all the segments, or the boomers, right? Everybody wants to now be part of digital, right? So meaningfully engage with them, meaningfully put out products and services for those customers, deliver them digitally, and then help them to transact and engage with the bank, but within a compliant manner. So I think that's where the banks are today, if you ask me, in the journey. Of course, in Karnataka banks, we are no different. Now, having said all of this, the fact remains that banking is such a business, or bank products are such products where at some point there will be some physical or human touch which will be required. Many times it's the product itself which kind of needs it. For example, let's take an example of a home loan against a personal loan, right? If I'm giving a personal loan, I can definitely underwrite you digitally and give you a product. I can put the money in your bank in a matter of minutes, and it's happening today. A lot of the banks are doing that. Cut to a home loan, right? There is while of course you can choose your property digitally and all of that, there's so many sites, but the fact is you're going to engage, physically to kind of identify the property. You come to the bank, you must still apply digitally into the bank for a home loan, but there is going to be a leg of legal and technical and other aspects, right? Because the bank will not be able to digitally underwrite that entire case, right? While I may digitally underwrite the borrower, the property I can't digitally underwrite. And there are ways that are still today also, there are a lot of companies or fintechs which are kind of trying to crack that code.
Yes.
And they have done to a fair degree of success, but still the fact remains that I need to get my legal guy and my valuer going there, looking at the property, doing all of the checks, doing a title search, and then giving me a clean report on the technical and legal. So there is a human leg attached to it.
Yeah.
So there are such products and services in the bank. Even if you if you graduate up the curve from a retail to maybe a mid corporate or even an MSME customer, there's still a human touch that sometimes becomes necessary, right? Because again, let's take the example of MSME. Now in the MSME space, customer may not have necessarily the kind of documents that you need, that the bank needs to be able to underwrite and assess the customer. So a lot of times you have a credit guy who will go across to the customer's shop or to his office to understand the business better. In lieu of documents, what is the way that he can kind of understand this customer better and use that opportunity to underwrite that customer.
Yeah.
So there is a human leg involved there, right? And it's very difficult to do away with that in toto.
100%.
Right. So that is where banks are. So to my mind, while all of this digitization will continue to happen and it will start contributing in a meaningful way to the revenues for the bank, the big revenue drivers will remain the branches, right? And most of the banks today, like we, for example, Karnataka Bank, 950 branches in 22 states. And more than 90% of my business today comes from the branches.
Yeah.
So is it something I can ignore or do away with? I can't.
100%.
Right. And there are customers even today who are literally walking in by the minute into the bank branches to do banking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now of course we have to understand different customer segments play differently, right? I mean, if there are people like us who don't have obviously time to go to the bank, I don't know when was the last time you would have gone to a bank branch, or I also for banking, right? I go because it's my job, but right, I have to go there, but then I don't go to the branch to bank. But there is a segment of customers whom we are catering to who like to come to the bank.
Yeah.
Right. And they want to be there. They want to see a human face. They want to engage, physically and, communicate verbally across the table and get serviced also that way. And that's a huge part of our revenue. So I think that will continue to stay. But yeah, I think the key for the banks is to figure out how this digital piece within an overall structure of a bank can grow meaningfully to contribute to revenue.
Perfect. Yeah. I think that was a masterclass on the history of digitization in banking in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
So I'll tell you why I'm so, I would say, deeply invested in this topic. So I started my career building some things like, I built a personal finance management platform and a mutual fund transaction platform and so on and so forth. And that was in 2011.
Okay. Wow.
Even today, if you look at the digital penetration of mutual funds, or if you look at the digital penetration of insurance, or if you look at the digital penetration of loans, is in a very, very good place compared to these two. But if you look at those numbers, still the numbers are very small, abysmally small,
Absolutely.
right? And this has been a, how do I put it, a crusade or a personal crusade of mine for ages. So while it is very, very, very tempting for me to go into a discussion on AI and LLMs in the next, and spend the next 40 minutes on it, I think both of us would agree that the core digitization opportunity still is so massively huge. Maybe we will leapfrog it with UI, with AI, but understanding the core of why this particular gap exists, right, is probably going to enrich both of us and as well as the audience who is probably going to be watching this. Because unless you understand that piece, AI is just a tool, or LLM is just a tool which you can utilize that. But the core underlying problem statements, right? As you rightly said, there are multiple personas. There are people who want to come to the bank. There are people who want to, get serviced and so on and so forth. Completely fine. But is that the only challenge which exists? Is that the only problem statement that exists? There is one thing which you alluded to, which I think hit the nail on the head, which is about risk.
Yep. Very true.
I think the perfect measurability of risk is what? Is at the end of the day, it all comes down to, have you measured risk perfectly? It comes down in the NPS.
Correct.
There is no other measure for it. It's as simple as that, boss. Is your GNPA good or not?
Correct. Absolutely.
It's bad, it's bad. Sorry. You didn't measure risk correctly.
Absolutely.
Right? I think it all comes down to that one point of risk, both from a NPA perspective, as well as from a fraud perspective, as well as from a regulatory perspective. Right? So risk measurement, I am sure that you have seen this happening over your career also, that risk measurement has also leapfrogged and become digitally enabled.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you had some instances which strike you when I say digitally enabled, sharper risk measurement, that would be great.
No, great. Absolutely. So two parts to that, right? And some bit of that I spoke about very briefly on the underwriting side, right? I'm linking that to risk because that is where you assess the customer, and that's where you kind of categorize the risk of the customer, right? Into which bucket he belongs, and then out of that flows your pricing, the amount of money you want to give to him, or whether you want to lend to him or not, and all of those things, right? So credit risk, if I have to call it that, right? That is one huge area which on the digital side we've been trying to enable, right? There's so many things. You guys are doing so much of work in that space too, and that's one big evolution which has happened while businesses or customer engagement or the customer experience on the front end has kind of started getting digitized. This is one big area, right? Because while we are trying to do all of these things on the front end, first and foremost, it is very important to understand this customer, right? And that is where on the underwriting or the assessment side, a lot of digital enablement has happened, whether it means talking about alternate data, which is coming to be able to understand this customer better, being able to, use study the bank account statement and get better insights about the customer's behavior. Ultimately, what are we trying to do? Right? There is, if you have to talk about basic banking, Casey, it boils down to ability and intent.
That's
right. I mean, that's what we speak about. Right. We've been from the
We've
day
been
we
taught
probably
that.
got into industry. We've been talking about that, right? As cliched as it may sound, but it's true even today.
It's true even today.
And for me to be able to, gauge the ability of this customer, understand the intent of this customer, I think there are a lot of tools digitally which are being done. And this, as I said, there's some great amount of work that people like you guys have been doing, which has actually helped the banks kind of adopt these technologies and understand the customer better. So that's one area definitely that we have been able to see a huge amount of progress on the credit risk side, right? Also, if we look at operational risk, and that's where I was talking about money mule and anti-money laundering and all of these tools. Today, there are so many tools, rule-based engines where you have these applications which sit on top of your core banking platforms, and which is kind of churning out so many transactions on a daily basis, right? Humanly impossible for anybody to look at it and find patterns, understand what is wrong, what is this exception, why is this customer done this? Impossible, right? So what do you do? Because the risk is live today. There are so many issues that the banks are facing on money mule and money laundering, and the regulator rightly so is coming down with a ton of bricks on banks, right, for all of this. So there is no other way but to adopt digitization and digital applications to help us to kind of maybe study these transactions, find the patterns in it, and then pick it up for maybe further action, right? And there are so many tools and applications every bank would be using today. We do, obviously at Karnataka Bank, without getting to which application, but we do use those tools where we are able to define rules. And then, using AI, using machine learning, we are able to actually refine these tools better, these risk management or governance rules better. It is able to pick out transactions which are suspicious, which are something that we need to kind of look into or do a deep dive into. That then gets actioned by a particular team which is sitting there waiting for this input. And then there's a customer engagement which happens, and then action or whatever the due course of action kind of takes place. But that would not have been possible if we didn't have this ability to be able to use this application to sit on top of our transaction database and then pick out these kind of cases. So definitely these are two areas where I see a lot of work which has happened, a lot still to be done, because fraudsters are kind of getting smarter as the day, right? I mean, you kind of plug one loophole and we find there's a new way by which we get conned. It's happening every other day. There are tons of reports that you can see, or publications carry a lot of news about how the scamsters have kind of pulled a fast one. So there is a need to continuously be on your toes, be innovative, think sharper, use your AI tools, use machine learning or whatever models that you're using to be able to kind of be one step ahead in the game.
Yeah.
So I think that is one big area, Casey, that I see a lot of work has happened on the digital side.
There are other two aspects which I want to talk about. The first aspect, I'll just lay it out for you. I think we didn't, so we started at least the way I started the discussion was more about the fact that why is there big revenue items lying on the non-digital side still.
Yeah.
So let me ask a little bit more, and I'll save the more controversial question for the last. This is a little controversial.
Sure.
Is there a need? And this is a very important question to ask, right? Because at least, see, again, I have been a financial services guy all my life. So I'm sorry if I come out as a number cruncher, but at the end of the day, decisions are made based on profitability, based on market economics, based on customer satisfaction. That's it. There is nothing else as far as the decision making is concerned, right? So the larger question, and this is probably, we are stepping away from the tactical to a little bit more strategic. Right?
Sure.
Is there a need to digitize in, say, wholesale banking?
Yeah.
Is there a need to digitize in home loans, as you rightly called it? Is there a need to digitize in, let's say, the corporate banking?
Yeah.
Right? Is there a need to digitize there? Or are we just saying, hey, you know what?
See,
I should digitize for the sake of digitizing?
True. No. So it's a yes and no, right? There are certain areas where you really don't need to digitize. You're right. See, the customer is not coming and telling you that, boss, I will take this product only digitally, right? Mm-hmm. Customer is expressing his need. Customer is saying, I want a product which you can give to me as fast as possible, which you give me with a minimal amount of effort from my side, where you deliver it to me at a convenient point in time or a place, and you kind of price it well and you give it to me quickly, right? These are the things that the customer is expressing.
Yeah.
Customer is not saying that, boss, I want it only if it comes through my mobile app, otherwise I will not take it. Customer is not saying that, right? So that is what the customer need is. Now it is up to us to understand that need and translate that into how to deliver it to that customer in the best possible manner, right? And if that means digitizing, then we damn well do it, right? If you don't do it, then somebody else is going to do it and you're going to lose that customer.
Yeah.
That's number one, right? Number two, as you rightly said, not all segments need digitization, right? I mean, in a wholesale corporate banking, right? There's a lot of work there happening too, right? Not that it's not happening, right? You have now applications through which you can actually study the financials better.
Yes.
Isn't it? I mean, you don't have to have a chartered accountant sitting and pouring through the financials to try and assess and come up with your CAM and other calculate all the ratios and all that. You have a lot of tools and applications which help you to do that, and that will continue, right? But then, as I said, there is going to be some areas where you will not be able to digitize, right? Like I just told you, and I know there are a lot of steps happening. In fact, we are trying to work with a couple of guys who have done a fair amount of work on the legal side, right? Where you can actually, through multiple websites, get an understanding of maybe tracing the property, doing a title search and doing all of those things. A lot of work has happened in that space, but have they cracked the code yet? No. Right? a lot of banks have adopted that as pilots or experiments, but still the traditional way of having a legal guy go across to the property looking at it is happening.
Yeah.
So yes, we don't want to digitize for the sake of digitizing. I think you need to digitize for the fact that you're able to see a significant uptake in your acquisition, to bring down maybe customer acquisition costs in a significant
You
manner.
nailed it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the point is, what is the metric?
What is the metric? Yeah.
If you been a product guy for all my life, and this is again coming out from a product guy's perspective. Ghisa pita, same thing. My boss keeps asking me the same thing again and again. My team keeps saying this.
Yeah.
What is the outcome metric?
Correct.
Retail, it is very clear. Cost, efficiency, risk.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah.
Wholesale and corporate, I don't think, to answer my question, I don't think you need to do digitization for the sake of operational efficiency.
Not
Your
necessarily.
margins are very, very good. You don't need to care about that.
Yeah.
What you need to care about in that basis is where you need to apply that.
Yeah.
So you nailed it. You basically said sharper understanding of financials.
Correct.
Real-time understanding of financials, real-time projection of financials. Now, I don't want to take the name of that company or the podcast, but there's a company which has basically said, another company which used to have a limitation for 5 years of a company data downloads,
Yeah.
they just removed that paywall and they just said, we don't do it like this company.
Yeah.
And we do it for free.
Yeah.
They did it like, I think yesterday or today.
Okay.
So the whole game of financial data analysis is going to change. Completely change. And now, if let's say that you take that, dump it into let's say you create a SLM of your own, and you say that, hey, you know what, my SLM knows how to analyze because my people have trained it.
Correct.
Rather than the entire world.
Correct.
And then feed that data to it, and then you churn out reports like your best breed executives or best breed analysts have.
Yeah.
That is value.
Absolutely. That's value. Right? Absolutely.
That is, I think, the missing correlation between thinking that digitization just means you have flow cop app banana.
Correct. बिल्कुल नहीं. बिल्कुल नहीं.
So I think that is where a lot of my, and this is where I thought that it's a little bit of controversial question, because the aspect always, this aspect seems to be a little murky, that let's digitize.
Yeah.
Not required everywhere.
True.
Digitization has different forms.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now let me ask a little more controversial question.
Sure.
The big C word.
Yeah.
Culture. Right. How important do you think that is? And you have worked in what, 10 organizations by now?
Yeah.
Easily, right? I have worked in 7 organizations by now.
Yeah.
You've seen multiple cultures. And cultures in relation to digitization/digital, right? How critical do you think culture is for the company's success in their digitization efforts?
Massive. Massive. I've seen in my own experience, and not even just observation, I'm talking about experience, where I've seen these efforts fail because of the word that you mentioned, culture, right? And when I say culture, I will kind of, talk about change management, because that's what it is, right? Eventually it boils down to change management. And the ability to be able to accept this change is something that, one, of course, needs to flow from the top. And it does from the top, right? The problem is not at the top, generally, right? While it's one aspect, it's one important point that the leader needs to have the vision 100%. And the thought process 100%. And all of that, 100%. Right? To be able to kind of strategize this and see where this is headed and why it needs to be done.
Yeah.
And be able to then translate that vision into, into meaningful actionables, or, a strategy for his 1 downs and 2 downs. But that's just one part of it, isn't it?
Got it.
After that comes the tough challenge of then kind of percolating that right down to the bottom, to the last mile, ensuring that adoption of this particular strategy and this particular whatever path that the organization has chosen is kind of then you kind of succeed with that. Otherwise, what's the point, right? In management, and again, sounds cliche, but in management, you have this concept called the frozen middle. I'm sure you would be familiar with that.
Sorry.
Okay. So the frozen middle, I'll tell you. So if you see structures in any organization, right, you have the top management, right, and then you have the middle guys. In a banking parlance, they would be the regional heads or the area managers, that kind of a segment. And then you have the branches, right, which is you have the branch managers and the large field force, whether it is sales or branch banking, all of that, right. The guy at the top gets it, right, because he's motivated, right. The leader and the 1 downs which is the top management, get it completely, right? Because they're sitting there, they kind of all buying into the same vision, same strategy. The guy at the bottom will do whatever he's told, right? The guy in the middle layer, which becomes the most important layer for you to be able to take your message down to the end guy, right, is the guy who generally gets ignored. And that's why they call the frozen middle, right? They are frozen because they don't know why we're doing this. Upar se bola kar raha hai. When they're going down, they're facing resistance from the bottom. They don't know how to handle it, right? So that's the problem, right? And part of change management, that whatever I have been learning in the last 30 years, KC, is part of solving this, right? A huge part of that goes in solving this, which means how are you getting your message across to this middle layer so that they understand, they are able to buy into what you are trying to say to them and why you're doing it, right? It's not just because my boss told me to do it. And then how are you enabling them, right? Equipping them to then take this message down to the bottom and execute it, monitor it, and ensure that the feedback which is coming from the ground is then percolating back to you. If you need to make any changes or if you need to do any pivots, right? Or if you just need to act. How is that happening? This is a classic, a chain in the change management space, which I have kind of learned through multiple organizations that I've worked in. And I've had the privilege of working with quite a few good consultants who have kind of been able to kind of help us through
this
this.
sounds like a word from a consultant.
It is.
Or
It is.
Yeah, because it's very cool. It's a very cool concept.
Yeah. And I loved it when I first heard it, and it is true, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing for the first time.
But when I explain what it is to you, I'm sure it would have it should resonate with you because that's where the problem is, right? The guys don't get it. Why are we trying to do this? So that's and that's change management, right? And if you are able to manage these three layers, top, middle, and the lower level, to be able to kind of see the vision that your management has, to kind of understand why you want to do it, the benefits, and everybody's going to ask you one question, Casey, or they're going to ask themselves one question: what is in it for me?
100%.
Right? And then that's the question you need to answer. If you are able to answer it for each layer in your organization, then any change management initiative, digital or otherwise, we could succeed. And that is something that needs a lot of effort. It's not just one fine day you wake up or you develop something and then you send it out. And this is not true only for digital. I would say this is true for any product also that I roll out. Right? If I'm rolling out a product today, one of the important parts of a product management role, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, Casey, is the go-to-market.
100%. GTM is
right. Otherwise, your product is lost. In the corporate office or in the boardroom, isn't it? So how are you going to take that product to the market? And that does not only mean the customer; it also means your own
internally, 100%.
Field teams at the ground level, right? So I think that is critical, and that is where I think a lot of organizations are not able to kind of translate this vision or strategy into reality, or see uptake on a lot of their initiatives on the digital front.
The reason I asked this particular question is because I've worked across multiple types of organizations. There are organizations which are in regular parlance, you would say digital first. That is, throw a problem at them. I will figure out how to solve this digitally first. Right?
Correct.
Whether it is needed or not. That's a different problem statement to solve.
Right.
Other companies that I don't want to solve this digitally.
Yeah.
I don't think that this should be solved digitally. That is a higher level problem. Yeah. I don't think this should be solved digitally is a higher level problem.
It's a mindset issue.
Right? Yeah. That I don't know how leaders like you have solved it, but I have only been able to, probably do bare minimum success to it, honestly. I've not probably been able to crack that part of the equation.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it's a tough one, Casey.
Very tough.
No clear answer to that, but you have to plow on. One is, of course, that's why I said, I think inclusiveness is very important here. Your ability to kind of take people along to see the larger picture.
Yeah.
I think that is something that you need to have, and you need to be able to kind of, pass it on to your people, because otherwise it's going to be difficult. So that, having said that, ultimately some bit of it will also be enforcement. I don't know if that sounds incorrect, but the fact is yes, right? So you need the right mix. So the point is, as a leader, you need to know when to be inclusive and when you probably need to be a bit of an enforcer.
Yeah.
Right? It's a mix. It can't be that only enforcement will work. It will fail. Because it may start off because they are doing it because they are being told and ordered or whatever you call it, right, in that sense. But beyond a point, it'll break, right? At the same time, if you're inclusive, which is very good, right, There will be odd guys, like you mentioned, who will.
There'll definitely be odd guys. That is the right word. It's odd. It's not prevalent.
It's not prevalent. But there'll be the odd guys, but they may be in crucial positions which can influence, like the frozen middle I spoke about, right? So
Definitely.
right. So you don't know. So you need to kind of be able to understand that and look at what approach works where and when.
Yeah. So, is it driven? So, I don't know if you've heard of this, but my brother is a software engineer. There's a lot of people who are software engineers. There is a prevalent fear that, hey, you know what, AI is going to take away my job.
Correct.
And what I've told them and what I've told anyone who's spoken to me about this is that computer came, typewriting as a skill didn't die. Right. It became something else. It morphed into something else.
Very true.
Then computer came in, internet came in, and it's not like knowledge bases were replaced. They became something else. People graduated to become something else. I don't think AI is okay. Fine, AI can write your code for you, design your UX for you, so on and so forth. But does that have like a? I mean, obviously, you've heard one of the foremost owners of this another big AI company, which I don't want to name said that, hey, you know what, white collar jobs will not exist in the next 4 years. I don't think so. I don't think that kind of alarmist thought process is required. But do you think that digitization, right, in the last 6 years, forget about AI for 1 second, we'll come back to that. But in the last 5-6 years, do you think that fear drove resistance?
Of course it did.
Okay.
Of course it did. There would have been some, and again, this is true for a lot of the people at the field level or maybe at the middle level, like I spoke about. Definitely the resistance that was, if this comes and what happens to me tomorrow, right? That's again where the messaging and the change management that I spoke about, Casey, where if I'm able to explain to him why and how this is going to benefit you to do your job better rather than
What's in it for
replace you. Yeah, what's in it for you? I think if you answer that question, he is sorted and you are sorted too, right? So a lot of these times, these initiatives are rolled down, but there is nobody hearing, explaining and hearing the voice of the not the customer in this case, but your internal customers, right? And what are they saying? What is the mood in the field? What's happening in the field? And that is where again, as a product manager, I've always believed that. One, of course, while you build products and make products in the head office, if you are not out there in the field, with your branches, with your customers, on traveling and meeting up, understanding what's happening with your ears to the ground, then I think you'll never be able to deliver a product to the market. Never.
And the first principle of product management is customer centricity.
Absolutely.
Customer centricity includes your customers, which is basically
absolutely the guys who have to sell the product, right? So definitely that is there. I think if you're able to do that, then I think a lot of this resistance kind of will evaporate, definitely in my view. And as I said, it is also about, you spoke about AI replacing humans, or while we are seeing AI is replacing humans, ultimately AI to my mind will largely remain a co-pilot kind of a concept rather than a pilot kind of a concept. This is my view. And I heard this I was reading this very beautiful post by somebody sometime back, where he says, and he was talking about product management actually, right? So that is why it kind of interested me. There was some talk about whether AI will replace product managers. And, he said that, boss, fine. I mean, AI can maybe, through data insights, all of that, give you the idea, give you the product, all that. But product management is also about aligning all your stakeholders for a particular product, right? And you, again, are a product manager, you know what I'm talking about. I need to kind of get my business guy to get convinced on why he should kind of take this product and sell it. I need to get the compliance guy to agree that yes, this is within the boundaries of compliance. I need to get my IT guy to accept and say that okay, I will deliver it with, within a reasonable time frame. I need to get my operations guys. I need to get my risk guys. I need to get my finance guys.
That's a very different way of looking at it.
Right. I need to get my finance guy to and accept saying yes, this product is going to be profitable. That's why we should price it like this. AI can't do that. You need a product manager to do that, isn't it? I'm sure that's part of your daily life. It is part of my daily life for sure.
Yeah, it is definitely part of the day.
So there's no way, right? AI can be a co-pilot at best to kind of help you to navigate through this process.
So I'll get to the AI in a bit. Let's go back to a little bit on the resistance bit, which we spoke about, right? I think that it's also a little bit about the power retention. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Right?
Okay.
At least in the old days, when underwriting was manual, long ago, this was like ages ago.
Still is. What's
pure manual, like completely manual.
okay?
There used to be a guy who used to know exactly what to look at in the report and which fields to look at, so that he can figure out that this particular person is a risky
customer
person.
do, yeah.
Risky person.
It's a risky person.
Risky person whom I know how to catch.
Yeah. Okay.
Then he used to train 2 or 3 of his people, and they used to basically figure out the certain thing. And then they used to take that knowledge to wherever they go. And they used to always travel in packs. They used to leave organizations in packs, travel across organizations. They come as teams. Right? This was olden days.
Yes.
Similarly, if you look at sales folks, right? Sales folks used to know that if, let's say, in the last, being a financial services guy, that's why I'm only taking financial services example.
Sure.
But sales guy used to know that in the month of March, which insurance policy do I have to book when, so that it appears how in the final MIS, so that the incentives are correctly tracked. And that he used to then train his people and then.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you look at then IT or IT started coming in, not digitization. IT started coming.
Yeah.
Then there are systems which were created.
Yeah.
Then there used to be a guy who used to know that particular core banking system, this particular issue, how to solve, only I know.
Correct. So true.
Then came so I'm just taking all our discussion and culminating into this, and we'll speak about AI after this. But I think it created power reserves or power centers, saying that this is knowledge which I have, knowledge which I can this thing, and that's why I am irreplaceable. I am not easily replaced in this organization. Very complicated systems, and you know this better than me. Loan management systems.
Oh yeah.
The ins and outs of a loan management system configuration for a particular product. I don't think even now there would be more than 4 people in an organization who would know to the nth degree what that is.
Yes. Right? Absolutely.
And I think there is a larger perspective here.
Yeah.
Now that we have come to this topic.
Yeah.
That is getting democratized.
Yes. Very true.
The moment you go digital, right, and that information is available across knowledge bases of the organization.
Yes.
It is all documented in PRD. Yes. It is all documented in architecture diagrams. Yes. It is all available for anyone to browse and find out.
Yes.
There are learning management modules which are created on top of it and included as part of induction.
So true. Yep.
Right? The more the democratization of
knowledge
happens, right?
Yes.
I think then what happens is, and this I'm alluding back to the point which you made.
Right.
The power is shifting to those who have the knowledge or those who can align.
So true. So true.
So the power started shifting from the knowledge holders to the aligners. Very, very bad English.
No, but perfect. Makes sense.
Right?
What you're saying completely makes sense.
Could align.
Correct.
Yeah. And that created a massive rift between the product managers and the IT of an organization. Right? And that I think is a very, very, very big, point, which is again close to my heart, because there is the digitization is good if it is done correctly for that specific outcome.
Yeah,
is known to everyone.
Correct.
The reason I started the topic with the aspect that why is that not all prevalent or like all encompassive, all the fact that mutual fund penetration is only this much, insurance penetration only this much. I think it all leads to people, right?
Yeah.
I know we sound like very non-digital when we say that we are bringing people problems into like a digital discussion, but it does. Right? It does bring it to people.
Correct.
Right? The influencers or the people who can get alignment or who could do the thought leadership or who could paint the bigger picture or who could pass down or who could do change management, as you rightly said.
Correct.
Those started having a lot more premium than the people who only had the knowledge.
Correct. True. Very true. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
But I think my view is that, see, there is this lot that you're speaking about, but I think that lot today gets it, right? Beyond a point, they also know that the only way to kind of grow and survive is to kind of adapt and adopt rather than be the stumbling block, right?
Yeah.
So it's in a minority in my view.
That's a good thing.
Right?
That's
I think the larger point is about, going back to just what we already spoke about, letting people know why it's important and how it helps them.
Yes.
And a large part of the population gets it.
Yeah.
And they will appreciate it over time. Right? You will have the early adopters. So you have to play the game, right? You have to find out who are your early adopters, use them as champions, do all of those things, right? Obviously, without that, it's not going to happen. And that's all part of classic change management strategy. But yeah, the fact is that the large part will adopt. There are only few of these, guys or people who kind of still believe that that knowledge is power, and I need to keep it, close to myself, and so that I can be irreplaceable. I think that's kind of slowly, kind of going out. That's my view. Resistance are still there, and I completely agree, because when you were speaking and you were saying those words, I could actually kind of think back and relate, right, to a lot of these, instances or incidents which have happened and which keep happening. But I think that is something that will slowly
Die away.
over time, vanish. Right.
Now let me connect it back to AI.
Yeah.
So all of us, brought up in Google search era, we came up with the thought, we went from, figuring out, at least I'm old enough to say that Google search was not there when I started my professional career.
Definitely there in my case. If it was not there when you were there, definitely it was not there when I was around.
So we both, in our careers, we started Google search, right? Imagine a sort of utopian world like this, that obviously I don't know if it's Google or someone else. Let's assume that there is a blank search box. The moment you put your problem statement in it, right, it will basically tell you that, listen, these are the, so in the problem statement you put in, say that I want to underwrite MSME ship building yard for so much rupees, blah, blah, blah. Imagine if it tells you there are 6 agents available.
Right.
In this order, you need to use them. This is agent 1, who is basically going to do that company's valuation. This is agent 2, who is going to verify the legal aspects of it. Agent 3, agent 4, agent 5.
Yeah.
Right. Basically, I'm going into the agentic AI aspect, and every agent is something which is available to everyone across the world in pocket. So think of agents as like small task bots.
Sure.
Which are available for anyone to use,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now take the same thought process which we had about the knowledge aspect, right?
Yeah.
The question which I have, and this is probably where I was trying to get to, is that I think that the AI revolution is not only about knowledge aspect. I think knowledge was already taken care of as far as your Google search and all that. Now agentic AI will basically say that, listen, as long as the person knows exactly what he or she wants, right? The parameters are so perfectly put.
Correct.
I will give you the best agents to perform that task.
Sure.
And the selection of agents, obviously that person needs to have the brains to do it.
Absolutely.
Now think, the whole aspect of an organizational hierarchy and organizational structure changes.
Yeah.
People become experts at knowing what they want.
Yeah.
Rather than experts at doing
something. Yeah. So true.
And
complete shift, right? Beautiful shift. Yeah, absolutely.
It's again going. So what I'm trying to say is that it is not that having knowledge is not important. I think knowledge is probably the most important thing, which has been there before we started our careers long ago.
True.
long ago. Even there during our career and after. But the change management remains constant.
Yes.
But the knowledge part of it carries.
Yes.
But it carries in different forms. Right?
True.
So this is, I think, the next avatar of how knowledge workers will utilize AI.
Phenomenal, right? Wow. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
The thought is great. And yeah, I think that's the way it'll move. It also goes back to what I said about pilot, co-pilot, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, boss, you need to be the guy who's being able to kind of utilize whatever is available on the AI side, whatever bots are there, like which agent to use at what point in time for what. I think as long as you are able to apply that mind to it and, use that, orchestrate that to kind of achieve your results, makes sense. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. And from a banking perspective, I think, yes, it will take some more time. We are a lot of activity. We spoke about some of the challenges on the banking side, especially the data side and, legacy information, blah, blah, all of those things are there. So we have to solve all of that. But yes, I think that's a great way of putting it, Casey. I love that. Yeah.
Will there be teams, in your opinion?
There will be.
There will still be teams as large as the current teams, or there will be.
Whether they'll be as large or whether they're going to be deployed for other, different kind of probably work.
Yeah. Or imagine this
Others.
for that matter. Let's do a thought exercise, right?
Sure.
Right. For example, let's say that the branch in Raipur, right? Would they be using a different underwriting bot for the same retail lending journey or the same personal loan journey under 5 lakhs than a branch in Bhopal,
Why not? Why not?
right?
Absolutely. See, even today, if you see, and this is where the human knowledge comes in, right?
Exactly.
Right?
That's where
I know, okay,
you got it.
this is how Raipur market is. This is the problem in Raipur. These are the why how over leveraged my customers in Raipur are as against a Bhopal, right? So therefore, what is the kind of risk that I'm seeing in Raipur versus Bhopal? How can I kind of price it differently? What segments, what underwriting rules can I change, to underwrite customers in Raipur as against Bhopal? All of that. But if this is available as a bot, right, or as an agentic AI kind of
Agentic AI, workflow.
imagine how the branch guy now can actually use that, arrive at a decision, and then go ahead and disburse the case.
More doctors in Raipur, right? And that's why probably the number of self-employed are usually higher.
Higher.
So let's give a lower weightage to the self-employed rather than give a lower weightage.
Possibilities are phenomenal, right? And you're right, and that's where we need to go.
Yeah.
That's where we need to go.
But I think the core of all that, again, coming back to the same word which you used, is change management.
Change management, absolutely.
Right. The reason I know that I'm probably talking the same thing again and again, but I think it is so critical to get change management right with the people.
You can't emphasize it enough, Casey. Right?
It is not possible.
Critical, absolutely.
I don't think that a bank, financial, and this is something which I tell my wife very jokingly, that I love financial services because we produce money without putting in any kind of raw materials, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, financial services is something which we are producing great value, but what are we putting it as input?
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Knowledge, and knowledge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the people who have this knowledge, if they are equipped with the right mindset as well as the tools, right, that is going to be a different ballgame.
Huge.
I think
huge.
That is where my heart still says that that agentic AI is not even going to take one single job.
Correct.
Because
I agree.
At least in financial services, because I don't know about other industries, I will stay away from that. Right?
See, it may help you to rationalize and do all of those things, right? I don't think it's going to just replace. It will not. It will help you rationalize. It will help you, derive efficiencies. It will help you to maybe reallocate resources to
higher order.
All of those things will happen. 100%. Right? And that should happen because that should be one of your stated objectives for doing AI, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think there is a threat that it will end up replacing or taking away jobs and all that, right? I think it's far-fetched.
Yeah. One core skills which I think is also going to come up and which probably need to be polished, and I, including myself, probably everybody else in my team and everybody for that matter needs to polish is, we use this fancy term called prompt engineering. What is prompt engineering? Prompt engineering is stating what you want with exactness,
correct,
and clarity.
Yes.
That's
Agreed.
it, right? So I think that obviously we are conversing in English while, I'm 100% sure that there are tons and tons of Indian languages which people can converse in much better than us. For me by a margin, because I know 6 languages and all of them badly. But the point which I'm trying to make is that I think stating your need very clearly and very comprehensively, right, is going to become a big advantage.
Absolutely.
And I think it also comes from that little bit from the thought process, right? Clarity in the thought.
Clarity of thought. Very true.
How do you inculcate that? How do you inculcate that in your team?
I think it is about
larger
one. It comes with experience, right? Because you've been doing that, you know what works and what doesn't work. So that's one, right? So yes, experience is one, and two is then the ability to kind of pass on that knowledge and to your teams, right? That's the only way. Otherwise, I don't see it happening, right? See, your team members are all youngsters, pretty bright, right? They get it, right? They understand technology, they understand digital, they understand AI. But the knowledge on the banking side, where does that come from? It's not going to come from books. It's going to come from experience. And so you need a good blend of that experience along with, the next whiz kid that is kind of, coming into your team. I think you need to blend that well to be able to achieve what you said, right? Which is when the clarity of thought will come, which is when you're then giving the right kind of requirements and, and stating what you want, else you will end up with incorrect results and then incorrect decisions coming out of those results. And we've seen so many examples of that also, right?
Yeah.
Right, and where we talk about hallucinations and other things.
Yes, thank you for using
Right,
that word.
yeah, absolutely right, and then you find that you kind of taken the wrong decision based on wrong output.
Yeah.
But who's to blame?
Yeah, yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah. I'm so happy that this is a podcast and this is recorded, because I am going to definitely rewatch this and understand. Because see, what you said, right, from the fact that experience and WizKids working together, I think that's not a easy working relationship.
Oh, it's not.
It's not an easy working relationship. It's not something which is a cake, walk in the park. It requires a huge amount of patience.
Yes.
It requires a huge amount of acceptance of saying that, hey, I was wrong.
Correct.
Right. And that is not an easy combination.
No,
to
it's
get
not
at all.
And in fact, if I were to draw that from a larger perspective,
Yeah.
that is also where collaboration between banks and fintechs
Yes, very much.
is the key, right? I mean,
Beautifully brought together.
yeah, isn't it? That is where the collaboration matters. And everybody talks about today whether fintechs are going to compete with banks or banks are, looking at fintechs as competition. No, right? I mean, not at all, right? Each brings its own strengths to the table. The bank brings its experience, its ability to kind of, deep pockets, invest, all of those things, right? Plus banks bring in the regulatory understanding, the compliance, the risk aspects beautifully to the table. And fintech brings the innovation, the adaptation to latest technology, understanding the customer needs better, and ability to kind of deliver products better. All of that is what the fintech brings to the table, right? And if you kind of are able to blend this in beautifully, I think then it's a win-win. So I think we are here in the age of collaboration and partnership, right?
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise it's not going to happen. And banks which have kind of realized this early in the cycle and have kind of actually adapted and, kind of taken that as a core pillar of their strategy of growth are doing well already.
Are doing extremely well.
Extremely well.
Are doing extremely well. I think I love the fact that you brought it around to probably the main takeaway from this entire session is that there is absolutely no way to replace human intelligence, change management, knowledge, and collaborative work.
Yes.
Techniques, right? I don't think that part can be replaced. I
Absolutely.
don't think, and fit. Again, probably we should give a disclaimer that this is financial services and financial services only.
Yeah, we're talking about financial.
I don't know anything else. I don't know anything else.
और कुछ किया नहीं है लाइफ में तो
I'm illiterate as far as food technology or edtech is concerned, or in retail, e-commerce. Sorry, I don't know anything about it. But financial services, two people from financial services agreeing on such a human topic is probably one of the best outcomes which I would hope for this podcast.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for spending the time, and thank you for this discussion, which this is like a Neuralink opening, right? It happens, and the collaboration you can see when that thing happens.
Oh, thank you so much, Casey, for having me here. As I already said, I think it was fun hearing you and also getting insights from you and being able to share whatever I've been able to do over the last 30 years. I think it's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.